All right. Now we move on to finance. First, we have assignment of request for council action. For the finance committee, we have 1399 budget amendments, 13100 advance request, Gunnison Court reconstruction, 13101 fiscal year 2013 CDBG and critical infrastructure application, 13102 memorandum of understanding with Atlantic County Transit, 13103 bids historic district water line replacement, 13104 bids Fair Road Booster Pump Station, 13105 bids South Court Water Tank Improvements, and 13107 Medina Municipal Airport Hangars Flight Services. Public properties, we have one item, which is 13106, the UPAC recommendation for an ornamental fountain in public square park. So that's all the requests. First item on the agenda is a carryover item from Mr. Hannon, 1397 Downtown Strategic Plan. Mr. Hannon, do you want to plead your case?
I want to just give a brief update and ask that we table the discussion. And hearing some of council's concerns and regrouping and talking with Kimberly and the mayor, we'd like to target a couple additional pieces of research, look at some other cities, what their costs were, what their scopes of work were. We would like to pursue the state CDBG downtown revitalization grants, which provide $300,000 in funding in 2 cycles, so $600,000 total. But we want to get a little more feedback on what, those grants require downtown plan, but we want to see what the base scope is that we would need to do to meet those grant requirements. And we had talked about getting together a steering group, which would be done with the downtown plan anyway, the stakeholders to flesh out the priorities and what we want to target. So we're going to kind of get that started now, prior to any consultant work, and kind of have Kimberly shepherd that through, or start with the ED committee. Kimberly, if you want to add to that.
Yeah, we're thinking to put together the stakeholder group. We would use the Economic Development Committee as the base, and then add some folks from Main Street, Medina, and some other key stakeholder people, maybe some local developers and some other local business people, and start talking about the needs and the vision and the plan. From an economic development perspective, I'm particularly interested in applying for the, as Greg mentioned, the downtown revitalization grant program next year for the $300,000, and then there's another $300,000. With that comes some admin dollars to administer those grants, but more importantly is the ability to implement a facade renovation program that addresses downtown facades, light, streetscape, and those types of things. And it is the one item that Main Street Medina has gotten through their annual reviews. They have not gotten, I guess they got dinged for not having that facade renovation program, and this is one way to correct that problem is through the downtown revitalization grant. So in previous years, the state used to provide funding to do the downtown comp plan, but they don't do that anymore, so we've got to come up with that, and that's something that we have been setting aside money in our budget. We have carry forward dollars to do that, so we just want to pull together some more information and make sure that we're using the dollars wisely and getting the best bang for the buck.
Okay.
On the $300,000 grant, is there matching funds that come along with that, or?
You have to show leverage dollars. So if there's infrastructure improvements or other projects, or even private projects that are going on within the district, like Farmers Exchange, revitalization, we'll want to flag that as leveraged, but we don't have to give city general fund money to match.
Thank you.
And the other item too is, on a facade renovation program, my recommendation would be to carve out some of those dollars and then have that as a match. So if somebody needs to do a project and it costs $20,000, we would kick in 10 from our grant, and then they would kick in 10,000. So that way they have skin in the game, and the project would more likely be successful and go through completion because they're putting some of their own money in. So.
Thank you.
Other questions?
The only thing I would like to thank Greg for his time the other day in talking about this and taking that step back, and let's utilize what we can within the city first before we start expending city dollars for this. I think that's the right way to go. Thank you.
One of the things that we talked about is we know of a number of studies that have recently been done for other cities outside of Columbus, Greene. So what we're gonna try to do is get copies of those, take a look at what the data was that was gathered, how much of that can we do first. And then if the grant requires it to be somebody that has certifications that are beyond our limitations, maybe that's what we use, you know, the request for the additional, or the city funds for. But if not, if it's simply something where we can collate all the data and then apply for the grant under the degrees and existing certifications of staff, then we can track it out. We're just not sure until we ask the grant provider, you know, what exactly does this have to look at, and what credentials do you have to have submitted, so that we don't end up submitting something that's a sure chance of not being approved. So.
I think the other thing too, just, you know, to inform the CIC, I think this plan will also help give some focus to the CIC on identifying key parcels that maybe the cities should invest in for future redevelopment opportunities to control those sites. So, so that's the other thing in the back of my mind as well.
I know this is different than other studies that we've had. The only concern I had, when we had studies on Masonic, we had studies on,
We shouldn't call it a study, we should call it an actionable plan.
well, we still had that plan, it's still sitting there, I mean, gathering dust, so. That was my only hesitancy. I've been here a long time, and there's been a lot of feedback and flack, so to speak, with all the studies that we do obtain, and I see the benefit in a lot of them. A lot of them, I think, through the years and through the experiences and knowledge of the various people throughout the community, we do a pretty good job on a lot of things. I guess you have to see what this entails. I get concerned a little bit. We have to use the study, I guess, and we've spent a lot of money on studies over the years, and we ought to make sure that they're fully utilized. Otherwise, we could use that money to renovate ourselves, whether a facade or something of that type. But Bill, you had something or no?
No, I agree. I'm glad that we're looking at it this way. I think the smartest thing you can do is to know, like you said, when it is you need to get outside help to do a study, and then when you don't, you know, and we have a lot of really smart people here, and we have a lot of talent in the community also. As Kimberly said, that I think you can put together, and when I looked at it, I was thinking, much like when we looked at the code recently, you know, we looked at the code changes recently, and you put together a group with the chamber and other folks, and I think that, you know, I would like us to do it without spending money unless it's something that we have to do. I would though like to know who is on the makeup of the stakeholders committee, because I would want to be sure that there's somebody on the committee that is from preservation and restoration as well.
I do need to get some of those names and email addresses, and once we get that, work towards getting that date nailed down for that first meeting. I mean, I can obviously invite all of council if you guys have time to attend. I'm gonna try to make it a meeting that would be like at 7:45 in the morning. So.
It's my favorite time.
Yeah, so at least that's the goal right now, is to have an early morning meeting. But if there are some people's names and addresses, if you could get that to me so we can coordinate with the schedules.
Absolutely, thank you.
I think the other thing too, just not to beat it to death or whatever, but, and obviously I'm still relatively new compared to all of you that have been here for a really long time. But I know that they did the Champion Creek Smith Road corridor study or plan or whatever it's called. And through those efforts, I think a lot of good came out of that. I don't know what the cost was for that plan.
No, we didn't use any city funds on it. We got a grant for about $4,000.
Okay, so just from that, that's spurred the Farmers Exchange Project and the LACA grant. That was, what, $200,000?
Yeah, it's about $2.5 million in grants that we've been awarded since that study and implementation, plus the announcement of the Farmers Exchange Project. I think the one other study we've done in my time here was in Masonic. We did that with the CDBG grants. And the real piece there was that was a lot of help to the Masons, but more importantly to when Architectural Justice was looking at it. We had existing floor plans, profiles, specs on the building, so fortunately I didn't lead the redevelopment, but both those have been good tools for the city.
And I think that's important, what you just said, because I think, because John alluded to, I believe that frequently studies are important, and they do matter, even if it's, in like you said, indirectly. The Smith Road corridor plan, I think, impacted a lot of other things, as well as how people are thinking about just generally planning that area. And there is a benefit to studies too. But I think this approach of trying to see if we can do it in-house first and with local folks is a great way to go.
And on consultants, I know each one of us up here, and the administration too, when you talk to the general public and constituency, I would have to say overall is very, very satisfied with the administration and the department heads and the way we've been able to spend our money wisely. But anytime the media puts something in the paper that the city's going to hire a consultant, whether it be for a traffic study, even like John and Bill said, when there's areas that are warranted, the public perception is, boy, you're wasting, when you got so many experts in the city, why are you? So that I think in general, the public doesn't understand, even when it's for a good thing. So I'm glad to see that we're stepping back on this and proceeding more slowly in the areas that we're going to need it. Thanks.
All right, well, keep us informed, and we'll, when it's ready to come back, bring it back to finance.
Thank you.
Okay, the next item is 1399 budget amendments. We have from the finance department 2013-026, it's $24,000, 107 for healthcare increase. Keith?
When we did the budgets for the finance department, when they were originally prepared last year, we had a different makeup of some of the employees, and their healthcare status has changed. I know it's a substantial difference, so that's why I laid it out here for you, so you'd be able to see what the change is. Single healthcare is $6,739 a year is the budget. Opt-out is $4,872, and opt-down is $7,939. We went from, the single stayed the same, but we went from one opt-out and one opt-down to two family. And the difference is $24,107, so that's what we're asking for.
Keith, did you, were these people in place from January 1, or should this be prorated for the number of months that you made these changes?
They were both in place on January 1st. They weren't in place when we turned in the budget, but they were in place by January 1st.
Okay, and the other question I have, when you showed these amounts, is that net of the employee contribution?
Yes, where I took these from, these are the amounts that we used for budgeting last year for the 2013 budgets, and yeah, it's net of the employee contribution.
I wanted to, couldn't remember how you did the employee contribution, how you offset it, so.
Other questions?
Move to approve?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries. We'll take the next two items together, finance 2013-027 and 13-100, the advance request for Gunnison Court reconstruction.
There's 3 appropriation adjustments. One is in the general fund to make the advance to the issue 2 fund. There's 2 in the issue 2 fund. One is to spend the money on the project, and then the other is to repay the advance once we get the money from the granting agency. And then the second item is the authorization for the grant. We have to ask council to specifically authorize the advance. We do not have to ask for permission to refund the advance. That's assumed, as long as it's within the same year. So when we get the money from the agency, we just repay it.
And that'll be done, completed this year?
That would be Patrick.
Yeah, I guess it'll be completed this year, and it'll be,
Yeah, this is, being a state grant, we're not permitted to start until after July, when the new state fiscal year comes in. So it will be the second half of the year.
and there's new water lines going in there
New
too?
water line, new storm sewer, and new pavement.
Does everybody know where Gunnison Court is?
Yeah.
Off of Lafayette, by Circle Drive and by,
Prospect.
yeah, by Prospect, yeah.
This is, and this is something we talked about. I know, Jim, I know you want to get this done too. it's a small project, but if you live there, it's beyond meaningful and significant, and it's a great demonstration of what the city's, the city's capable of doing. I mean, water lines, fire hydrant, the street, if any of you've been down there, I mean, the street actually V's in. I mean, it's a V in, it's such a bizarre thing, and the folks that live there, and I know that from talking to Jim, that there was something you wanted to get, you've been trying to get done too, and we're quite happy, and I'm sure the residents are too.
So let's vote on the, I guess, the 2013-027 finance budget amendment.
I got a quick question
Oh, okay.
for Bill and I.
No, I didn't answer this question.
But I asked him and he didn't know either.
I did
What
too.
exactly is the issue 2 projects fund?
The monies, the grant monies?
What is, I've
The
never
state
heard
of
this.
Ohio,
State grant program.
For road projects.
state of Ohio, and I don't know, every year it's a little different. I think they've cut back on the amount of money.
It's actually, they changed the number, it's actually issue 1 now. Still refer to issue 2. It's a 10-year program, and actually it's coming up again, I think in 2015, and it's voted by the state. Everybody in the state votes on it. It's through Ohio Public Works Commission. We apply to our local county engineer who scores our projects and decides which ones are prioritized.
We've done quite a few projects in the city in the last 10 years at least.
Going back-
Every year we're doing a project,
This
aren't we?
is its second 10-year run, so we're on about year 18 or something. No, it's just the third, we're at like year 28. We spent, I can give you a summary, but it's I think, the best grant program we all have.
Move to approve.
Second.
Any further discussion, all in favor?
Aye.
And on 13-100,
Move to approve.
Second.
any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Motion carries, all right. The next item we have is 13-101, the fiscal year 2013 CDBG and critical infrastructure grant application. Sandy?
Yes, for your request for council action, I'm not sure what your copy says. When I looked at my copy, I used the template from last year, and it still has part of last year's on the bottom. So hopefully that's not what you have. I may have printed it before I finished it, but it should say, option 2 is if we're not awarded a CHIP grant. And it should have, not West Side Community, but it should have $30,000 for Parks and Rec facilities as option 2. That's what was advertised.
So what is it again?
Okay, the city was awarded $75,000 in their allocation grant. If the city is awarded a CHIP grant, which you applied for in April, for Community Housing Improvement Program, to pay for home repairs, then the city will apply for our public transit subsidy, with the cap for public service is $11,250. We do that each year. And then activity number 2 is Parks and Recreation Facilities, the purchase of 2 security cameras for Ray Miller Park. That was in a grant for 2010 for the Ray Miller Park project. When we added those funds to the splash pad, with the agreement, the state agreed that we would have to put those in a future grant. So that would be added back into this grant for $30,000. Activity number 3 is contingent on whether we're awarded a CHIP grant or not. The CHIP grant is competitive. It is a code enforcement. It's funding to facilitate our code enforcement, or our property maintenance inspector to do code enforcement activities in the targeted census tracts that the CHIP grant does their activities in. And I'll let Greg Hannon speak to that. That's for $28,250.
Just very briefly, that was plugged in a few weeks ago when we were looking at revenue options for the department as part of the staffing discussion. Obviously, we put the staffing discussion on hold at the moment. So depending on how the staffing discussion resolves in the next few weeks, we would determine if we wanted to pursue that revenue option.
And the reason for that is the CHIP grant, being contingent on the CHIP grant, is code enforcement requires that you have a program in place to help pay for those repairs if you're imposing those repairs onto the homeowner. So that would be our repair program. And then, of course, our fair housing is $2,500, and our administration costs we would have is $3,000. So that's a total of $75,000. So option two, if we're not allotted the CHIP grant, if we're not awarded the CHIP grant, would be, again, activity number one would be our public transit at 11,250. Activity number two would be parks and recreation facility for the purchase of the 2 new security cameras for $30,000. I have Westside Community in that.
That's what we have.
That's what we have.
It is not. It was advertised correctly. Activity number three would be the construction of additional handicap parking spaces at Medina Community Recreation Center for $30,000. I don't know if you would like to speak to that?
Sure. You know, we have 12 now, which is 4 more than we're required to have, but we have such a large influx of seniors and people that use the handicap spots at certain times of day that we would like to see another 8 or 9 spots with that money. It would just add right to what we have now. It wouldn't just painting new lines in the lot, losing other spots. It would actually be a whole section area. I spoke with John Burkhart in regards to it, and had Roger Winkler come down and talk about it, and they all thought it was a good project, and Pat and Steve and the fire marshal too all came down to see what area it would be.
So that activity was what would replace the code enforcement if we're not awarded the CHIP grant with the same dollar amount. And then fair housing, of course, is $2,500, and that stays the same. Administration would drop to $1,250. Also, the city is opting to apply for the critical infrastructure grant application. That is a 2-year program. If awarded, that's highly competitive. It's $300,000. It's for infrastructure projects, water lines is what we're opting to do. It allows for $15,000 cap on administrative costs, leaving the remainder of $285,000 for water lines. That is applied for with the allocation grant that we just spoke about. If awarded the critical infrastructure, both grants will run for 2 years instead of the allocation just for 1. And Patrick can speak to the water line if you'd like.
We selected Longview, being a area within that particular census tract. We've had a long history of the water line breaks. That would be a good spot to spend the money to replace.
I don't know if members of council had conversations, I mean, the allocation of the funds, I think sometimes it's for, we did the sidewalks for handicap accessibility. There may be some things on the 5-year plan, not at this time, because it's already been advertised, like next year you might want to try to get some input as far as what would, you would like to see the money allocated towards. I mean, they do a great job with the allocation, but we can, if you have some specific project in your ward that you may need extra money for, you might want to let Sandy know so we can put it on for the next year's grant. I know you probably have a few, it's probably both of yours, I imagine, some of yours. I don't know if any of yours is in there, is it? Probably it's in the census tract down south of Lafayette. I'm not sure. But, these are all, I mean, I wish we would always can give more to, with the issue we're gonna be talking about, surely public transit, but we're capped out, so.
Right.
Otherwise it'd be a reallocation, maybe.
Sandy, just to confirm, so where it skips from number 4 to number 6, there was not an option or an activity 5 on the first option, was there?
On the first option, no. There's
Okay.
4 activities.
5 activities, right? Because it goes from 4 to 6.
Oh, yes,
Okay.
correct.
And
5 activities.
can you refresh my memory on the 2 security cameras? I don't know, it seems a lot to me, 15,000 for each one of them.
That amount was Darren Zaremba in 2010, when we made application, did some pricing on what the security cameras would cost so they can report to the police station. And that's the prices he got, $15,000 apiece.
Okay, and we think those numbers are still good then, 2 years later, or?
More than likely, in that ballpark.
Okay.
And you're correct, it does seem like a lot for,
2 cameras.
so if we need that one, there's another discussion. Any other questions? Emergency clauses were requested on this one.
I move to approve with the emergency clause.
Second, including the emergency clause?
Any further discussion? All in favor with the emergency clause?
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries. Next item is 13102. It's the memorandum of understanding for the Medina County Transit. Sandy?
That, once again, we do this every year, where it is the agreement we have with the county to be part of the transit consortium, per se, to provide funding for them.
And Mayor, if you'd like to clarify a little bit, the money, this will be used and some level of service will be performed if we do nothing more. But if we want to keep the service the same as it is now, it'll cost more money.
Yeah, well, it's actually two different things. This is for 2013. What happened was, with the most recent census, we are being moved from rural transit to urban transit, which changes the whole dynamic of funding, federal funding becoming available to us. Actually, less money becomes available to us because now we're considered urban rather than rural. So they're looking to maintain the same services, asking the cities to increase the amount of money we're giving for our city, which has a great use, probably a larger use than the other two cities because of our LMI population, a number of people without cars or driver's licenses, handicapped transportation and medical transportation, dialysis and things like that routinely happen day in and day out. They're thinking, or they're projecting that what they'll need from the city is about $45,000 as opposed to the $17,500 that we've actually been getting a good deal all these years because the federal dollars were helping to make up for that. So now we have to make up the difference of some of those dollars that were cut. I have asked Commissioner Hambley to put together some more detailed information and then either attend a finance committee meeting or if Mr. Coyne prefers to take it to a committee before finance, but to explain what are the number of transports they're doing within the city, not necessarily city residents, because if they're on the loop, they don't know, they're not IDing the people. If they go to their house, they know who they are, but if they pick them up at the fire station, they don't know if they're from the city or they're not. So how many riders are being serviced in the city? What's the difference between a cab fare and the transit cost? So we can analyze those two things. And I'm sorry, I had a third question for him too. But the third question was, if we don't pay the $45,000, what is it going to cut to? What's the impact of the cut? So those are the three things I asked him to analyze for us and be prepared to discuss when he comes to present it to council.
Can the casino money be used for that?
That was my first question, Mr. Shields. Of course, they have lots of ideas for the casino money, one of which was expansion of the common pleas court, which when we asked them about combining the common pleas and the municipal court, they had no interest in pursuing the common pleas court. So we have a meeting this Thursday. Mr. Coyne, myself, Chris Jacob, and Commissioner Hambley to reopen the door of talking about the combined efficiencies of having a court in the same location, taking advantage of the parking, the security, the hearing rooms, all those things. So.
Good.
And we still have our meeting on Wednesday for our project.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, there's no use of abandoning what we're doing because
Right.
just want to keep it open. But yeah, I mean, so the decision on council is going to have to be where the funding is going to come from, if we want to fund it, and if we don't fund it, what the impact up to the residents of the city would be.
Right.
The memorandum of understanding before you right now, though, is just with status quo.
Correct.
That's providing the.
Oh, right, but this is a bigger issue that we have to start thinking
Right.
about.
Yes, sir.
Didn't they already have some type of projection of what routes would be cut?
Yeah,
I thought
they
I
do
saw
have,
something.
yeah, they do have the information. They're still kind of tweaking it to find out what they can do if they don't get any additional dollars, what other grants they're applying for another grant right now to try to offset some of those costs. So a lot of those things, a lot of the pieces of the puzzle just haven't come in yet. We have the rest of this year to kind of work out all that.
They'll share all that information with us.
Yes, sir. Well, they may not know about the grant. they can tell you that they applied for the grant and they asked for a letter of support from us, which I told them we're willing to do, provided they tell us that it's not contingent on committing to anything, because we are not ready to commit to anything yet. So if that letter of support is just to apply for the grant and there's no matching dollars required from the city, then I told them I'm willing to do that. But they're still kind of grasping where all the full funds from, if not from where they had them.
I am grateful that we're going to be revisiting the community court and the common police court combination again. Hopefully the commissioners would have changed their mind over the last 5 or 6 years.
Unless there was an opportunity to have a couple
I've
different.
never lost hope, Mr. Simpson.
I know. But I appreciate you pursuing this.
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
Move to approve.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries. 13103, bids for historic district water line replacement. Mr. Pat.
As it states, this is for new water lines in the downtown area. An estimate of $482,000, and we are asking for the emergency clause on this one. The next two, though, we are not. I think the request had it. That was just an error on my part. But this one, we are requesting emergency clause.
Any questions for Mr. Patton?
Move to approve with the emergency clause.
Second, including emergency clause?
All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed, motion carries. The next item is the bids for the Fair Road Booster Pump Station.
Thank you. Fair Road Booster Pump Station is the last of our 3 pump stations to be rebuilt. Speed Road one, of course, was built new back in 2002. The Coons one, we installed a new one in 2011. Fair Road one is a little over 50 years old. It was built in 1960. Most of the equipment in there is original. This project will reuse the existing building, so it's not going to be a new building. But we do have 3 new motors, 3 new pumps, automatic transfer switch, and then a lot of other electrical and mechanical upgrades.
Any questions?
Didn't we increase some of the water rates to help cover some of these projects?
Kind of a loaded question.
Yeah. Thanks.
That was discussed in our recent Water and Utility Committee meetings. These projects are covered. There's future projects that we hope to do in the next coming years that may not have funds available.
So there's funds available for these.
From our water fund, so we don't need the bond sale funds.
We issue bonds,
We financed.
we issue bonds in the water fund as well.
Oh, okay, I got it.
Right.
Mr. Coyne, on the request for council action, it says installation of 3 new VFD motors. The
Yes.
second one should read installation of 3 new pumps.
That
So
one.
it's not 6 motors, it's 3 motors, 3 pumps.
Pumps, yeah.
Just like Mr. Patton said, just caught that.
Any other questions?
Move to approve.
Second?
With?
No, they don't, he doesn't need the emergency clause.
Maybe it's on this one or the next one.
Oh. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries. Next one is the 13105, the bids for Southport water tank improvements.
This would be for the recoating of the interior wetted portion of the tank on South Court Street, 500,000 gallon tank. Inspection revealed that the original coating system, and I believe that was built in '89, late '80s, is in need of replacement. Our water department strongly desires to metalize it, have it go with instead of a painted coating, do a metallized surface. So that's what our request is with this project. A good part of the preparation for this was to figure out how to strategically and safely take that tank offline. It's never been offline since it was built. By offline, I mean the tank will be emptied so we can do this work. Just as was pointed out before, that doesn't mean people will notice any kind of difference in their water pressure or availability. It does, the concern there obviously is any kind of fire flow or break should happen during that time. We've got some methods to compensate for that.
Does the Fair Road Booster Pump Station play into that? Do you need to have that finished before you start this for the?
Those are two different systems.
Oh, they're two different areas of
Yeah,
system.
Fair Road fills the Lake Road tank, the Coons, and actually that's why this one is kind of progressing like this. We wanted the Coons booster pump station up, so what it's gonna do is maintain the pressure that the tank usually provides. And that Coons station was completed, I think, in 2011.
Questions? You know I'm gonna ask this question. It was 130,000 last estimate, now it's 161. I guess, I mean, that doesn't include the engineering, which we already paid was 20, so it's 181, and I think your original estimate was 150. I mean, what went up so much that it went up $30,000?
This estimate was provided by the consultant. Those previous ones were ours. To be honest with you, metallizing is not, it's kind of unique. Not a lot of tanks and communities go with it. It's a little more expensive than regular coating. So there's not a lot of data available in terms of the going rate, so to speak.
And how much longer did you say that would last? How much?
We had, actually, the Bolivar Alley tank that we just took down a couple years ago, that was metallized, and that was 50 years old, and it was perfect shape.
Well, for the whole entire time.
Right. Our Progress Drive tank, we metallized that when we built it. We paid extra for that. Our guys really believe this is the way to go.
Now, what was the determination when we did this tank that we didn't want to metallize it? I mean, it was in the 80s, I guess. Did they have it back then?
Yeah, I don't know why they didn't back then. Like I said, it's kind of unique. There's not a lot of community, that's one of the, I don't want to say risks, but there's not a lot of contractors that do this. There's one in Canton. We contacted a couple others that said they'd be interested in bidding. We wanted to make sure there's some competitive bidding. We'll see, because both of those are out of state, but they said they'd be interested.
And is the main reason for the metallizing, it just helps it last longer then?
Correct, yeah. It actually, it's a rust inhibitor, obviously, corrosion protection. It becomes part of the structure. It's bonded on there. Zinc, actually, we're kind of lining it with zinc.
And other chemicals, well, I guess we're drinking that water, but I hope that wouldn't be.
It's fine.
And I think it was the Bolivar tank that originally was not, and then when you recoded that, that's when you metallized that one.
The Progress tank, well, the one we built in 2007, I think, as that was designed, it didn't have it. That was an upgrade that we elected to go with. With Bolivar, it's been that way
Oh, from the beginning, so 50 years ago? it
before we
was.
took it down, yeah.
Okay, yeah, because that's why I wondered, I thought, well, maybe, why didn't we do Southport that way then? So, it was built long after that.
Yeah. The Lake Road, the same way. Lake Road is not metallized.
So when is that one coming up?
That one, our last inspection, we do inspections, I think the Water Department does them every 4 years, and the last one was probably at least 3 years ago. It didn't merit any kind of project yet, but we'll watch it every 4 years and see where we go.
Any other questions?
Move to approve?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? The last item today is 13107, Manhattan Municipal Airport hangars, flight services. And we have Mr. Olson here. I'd like to talk about that.
Little background, since we took over the airport in '91, our first hangar we built was a 6-unit, we built that in '95. And then we built another 6 units in 2001. 2005, which is the last time we built, we decided to try and build more so it lasts longer. And we did at that time, we built, you can see there's a red item here, that's where we built the last unit. So we've now built 21 hangars. At that time, the future plan showed to put 2 more hangars in, just north of that. As you can see on this diagram, I'll leave it here if anyone wants to look at it. When we when we built the new administration building, we've gotten a lot more attention from people who are hangar in other places. And everyone has looked at the airport, and it's really a very, very nice place to go. Compared to the competition around here, we got 2 perpendicular runways, so there's a lot more pressure on hangars than we had before. We now have a waiting list of over 10 people for more hangars. So we're coming as a commission to say, we want to build 10 now, and probably within 2 years, build another 10. There's no expense on the city's part. We build it and we pay for it. Part of our ordinance that was originally passed said every time we come to put a building up at the airport, we need to get the city council approval.
So you're asking for approval, first of all, just for a study to be done in order to construct those hangars?
No,
It says to pay for a stormwater study,
well, that's my expense, not the city's.
paving and, I mean, okay, so this is all together.
All together, correct.
Greg's got a question or a comment.
The only caveat here is that this airport receives FAA grant money. And in order to put this additional hangar up, there will be more concrete. Before we can do it, we have to have a stormwater detention basin according to the Diane County. And in addition, the FAA will have to approve that stormwater detention basin on our airport layout plan. And I don't know how that's gonna go exactly. We're proposing to do this, but whatever you approve, it needs to be approved subject to FAA approval, because we're gonna have to get Irene Porter, who's oversees this, to agree with respect to the stormwater detention basin. I don't think they have too much to do with the hangar part of it. But that is an issue. The other issue is the FAA will require some kind of environmental study that they need to approve because of the stormwater detention basin. So,
Now, does adding more hangars affect any of our FAA grant funds we get every year? Is there a certain size that we get that they give us more money or give us less money?
well, you know, if we get more usage, it helps in presenting these projects to the FAA, but we've been getting good FAA response for the last 10 years as it is, so I would expect that to continue as long as Mrs. Porter is on board.
And the FAA just recently held one of the regional meetings at the airport. We're familiar with it. We've got a good response from them, and I expect we'll continue to do that. The study that needs to be done is required by the county. The FAA would pass on it, but the county is the ones requiring that we put a stormwater study in place and retention basin for that. We've already contacted 2 engineering firms and have one in mind to do the job. And everything they would do would be with using FAA regulations and meet their standards.
Well, here again, I hear that, but we have an airport layout plan, and as soon as we deviate from that airport layout plan, which this will, it causes some problems, so we need to work through those problems. That's an issue.
The main thing, when I'm coming at this time, is that we were hoping to get this project started in the spring. We didn't because of delays that we've experienced. And we have a waiting list that these are people who are not presently at our airport. If they have to push off and can't get this project done this year, I'm not sure they're gonna be standing in line to come in next year. So we have momentum going at the airport, we have an administration building, we have jet fuel. We wanna keep this momentum moving. Very important not to stall at this point in time.
And just so I'm clear, the hangars were part of the plan, the airport plan. That part's not a problem, it's just this retention basin. We don't know if that's what deviates.
The
Well,
hangars we're showing you, we're on the 5-year plan, we're on the EOP plan. They're already shown there. But the county has said you got a water retention basin. The FAA didn't say that, the county said that.
Yeah, but once we have to put that on the ground, we gotta put it in our plan. That's what the FAA is gonna require, that's the rub. So then that changes the, excuse me, ALP plan, which the FAA then has to approve again. That's what Mr. Huber's. It's like a big circle. So if you change this, they gotta approve it.
So if we just approve what the request with what Mr. Huber said.
Subject to FAA.
Subject to the
Yes,
FAA
sir.
approval,
I
we'll
think
be
we'll be
fine.
fine.
Mr. Olson will be fine.
The last time we built hangars, did we have to do the retention at that point?
We did not, because at that time, somehow it slipped through the county, and after the hangar was in place, the county sent us a letter advising that that is the last building that'll be built there without a retention study being done. However, we've also gotten the accommodations for the jet service there, their living quarters approved without doing the study, but they're saying now you will not go any further until you have that study done.
And they're serious.
Well, I don't want to take a chance, let's get the thing done, and I'm willing to pay for that just to get this project moving. I'm not asking for money, I'm saying.
No, I know, you're just asking for the approval to construct a building on the land owned by the city with no cost to the city.
Right.
I will make a motion to approve subject to FAA approval.
Second.
Any other questions? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you, Mr. Olson.
Thank you.
And thanks for again for your hard work out there.
Thank you. It is looking good.
That
Jump for the
appears,
city.
it appears to be the end of the agenda, unless there's anything else that anybody wishes to bring before finance. If not, we'll adjourn.